we have so many different mindsets, because we're so globalized, we are so interconnected. We have more possibilities than ever to find argumentations with people from across the globe, and therefore we really need to be open-minded. Welcome back again. Fred here, and today I want to discuss the book called Principles from Ray Dalio. And this is honestly such an amazing and interesting book, because actually I just want to talk about like 1% of the book. It's just 5 pages, but it's about open-mindedness. And why this is so interesting is because you don't see this a lot in other books. This is really a topic that has not been discussed a lot in most books that I've read, and it's something that I think is extremely important in our age, and that's why I want to touch upon open-mindedness in this video. First of all, a little bit of an overview for this video. So first of all, I want to talk about what are some barriers toward open-mindedness. Second of all, I want to talk about how can we become more open-minded, and thirdly, and also lastly, I want to talk about how you can react and how you can deal with people who don't want to be open-minded, because that might be the biggest and hardest thing to deal with if you're trying to be open-minded. All right, so first of all, as I said, what are some barriers towards becoming open-minded? Well, you have 2 things. You have the ego barrier and you have the blind spot barrier. Well, first of all, the ego barrier, this is probably the most common barrier, where you don't like to admit your weaknesses and your mistakes. That's just it's very human. I mean, even sometimes when people joke around and make a joke about me, and I know that they are joking, but it's still something that isn't true, I still feel like I want to defend myself and call them out because it's not true, even though it's just a joke. It's this ego barrier that you have, that you still want to, you don't like people talking about you when you make a mistake, when it's not true. Well, the other thing is the blind spot barrier, and this is also very important to realize, because we always think that everyone is the same as ourselves. We always think that everyone thinks the way we do, that they act the way that we do, but this is just not the case. People have different point of views, they have different perspectives, and that's really where this blind spot barrier comes along to barricade you to become open-minded. The next question, of course, that we have to ask ourselves is, so okay, how do we become open-minded? And there are 3 things that are very important here. The first one is you have to question and not state. What I mean with that is, if you're in a conversation, when you're in a debate, it's important that you don't just state your own argument over and over again, but that you question. Like, oh, why do you think like this? Oh, how come that you came up with this argumentation? Instead of just stating your own facts over and over again, you try to question. Well, that's the first thing. The second thing is leave your ego at the door. And this, of course, reflects back to the ego barrier. Even though this is by far the hardest thing to do, it's still important to think about that whenever you're in an argument or whenever you're debating something, don't just try to defend your ego. Don't just try to win the argument because you think that winning is the same as finding out the truth, because that's not the case. It's about trying to figure out who is right and why he is right. So try not to just win the conversation to think that you are right, because winning a conversation is not the same as knowing what's right. And the last thing that might help in this case is to suspend your judgment and try to empathize with the other party. And mind you, I'm saying empathize. I don't say agree with. You don't need to agree with someone's point of view, but to empathize with it leaves room for you to understand at least the point of view that the other person is coming from. And it can lead to questions, and in the end lead to hopefully an answer that you both agree with. Open-mindedness is not just finding out the best answer by yourself, but it's about finding out the best answer. So try to include the help of other people. Try to engage with different perspectives to find that out. In this age, we need to be open-minded because we have so many different mindsets, because we're so globalized, we are so interconnected. We have more possibilities than ever to find argumentations with people from across the globe, and therefore we really need to be open-minded. And as I said, the last part is, how do you deal with a situation where someone is just trying to be really close-minded, but you're trying to have an open-minded discussion? Well, this is of course a hard part. But there are, for example, 3 questions that you can ask to the other party to try to at least show them that you are trying to be open-minded. Well, the first one is, do you want me to share my open thoughts and opinions, or do you want to keep my thoughts to myself? Another thing you can ask is, are we trying to convince each other that we are both right? Or are we trying to open-mindedly find out who is right and why? I think maybe even the most effective question to ask is, are we just arguing here to see who's right, or are we trying to understand each other and trying to understand this topic that we are talking about? I think by using any of these 3 or all 3 of these questions really forces the other party to try to be open-minded. And if not, I mean, you can also just end the conversation right there, because I mean, if you're having a conversation with someone who's just really not trying to be open-minded, you might really have a hard time. Yeah, so now we've actually come to the end of this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned something from it. I hope you found out how you can become more open-minded, what questions you can ask when someone is not trying to be open-minded, and in the end that you just enjoyed this video. So thank you all so much for watching. Please check out my Instagram as well. I will leave the link in the description, and comment on this video if you have any suggestions for other videos, if you enjoyed the content, why you didn't enjoy it. And yeah, so thanks so much for all the support until now. As always, be positive, stay happy, Fred out.